As I adjusted the frequencies on my radio during my nightly patrol, a chilling question pierced through the static. What if the forest was trying to speak to me? The eerie silence of Olympic National Park, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of leaves, seemed to sharpen my senses. Suddenly, a voice broke through the interference, filled with emotion and urgency. It described a strange incident in a remote part of the park. Then it was abruptly cut off by a distortion that sent a shiver down my spine. In that moment, I felt an unsettling connection, as if someone or something was reaching out to me directly. I had chosen this life in the park to escape the chaos of the city, seeking solace among the towering trees and winding trails. Years of solitude had allowed me to witness the small mysteries of nature, the whispers of the wind, the flicker of shadows that danced just out of sight. Though I had always been a skeptic, dismissing urban legends as mere folklore, I had kept my radio close at hand. It was my lifeline, my tool for communication and safety amidst the wilderness. But this enigmatic transmission was different. It was a call to action, a plea that stirred something deep within me. Intrigued by the message, I felt an undeniable pull to investigate. I began to delve into the park's hidden corners, tracing the echoes of that voice. Old reports, the dusty journals of former rangers, and unsettling records of unexplained disappearances began to surface, weaving a pattern that was both disturbing and compelling. It seemed that someone, or some entity, was attempting to warn me of a hidden danger lurking just beyond the tree line. Each time I tuned into that distorted frequency, it felt as though I was being beckoned further into the depths of the forest. The night air was thick with tension, the shadows of the towering Douglas firs casting an oppressive weight on my shoulders. I could almost hear the trees whispering secrets, their gnarled branches reaching out as if to ensnare me in their ancient grasp. Memories of my past flickered through my mind. My childhood, spent in the suburbs of Port Angeles, where I often felt like an outsider, yearning for connection. My father, a park ranger himself, had shared stories of the supernatural, tales of lost souls and restless spirits that haunted the woods. I had dismissed them as the ramblings of a man haunted by his own fears, but now those stories came rushing back, igniting a spark of dread in my heart. As I ventured deeper into the park, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy with anticipation, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I could feel eyes, both seen and unseen, watching my every move. The weight of the unknown pressed against my chest, a reminder that I was stepping into a realm where reality blurred with the inexplicable. And so, I pressed on, caught between the need to maintain order and the growing suspicion that something supernatural was at play, hidden in the shadows of my beloved wilderness. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As night descended upon the forest, the familiar sounds of the wilderness transformed into a symphony of unease. The rustle of leaves morphed into whispers, and the hoots of owls echoed like distant calls for help. I felt the chill of the air seep into my bones, a reminder that I was no longer just an observer, but a participant in something far more profound. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, but somehow it felt inadequate against the shadows that loomed around me. My heart raced as I recalled the voice on the radio. It had urged me to come, to listen. But to what end? I was a ranger, not a ghost hunter. I had spent years finding comfort in the logic of my duties, patrolling the trails, monitoring wildlife, and ensuring the safety of those who ventured into the park. Yet, with every step I took deeper into the woods, my rationality began to fray at the edges. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, silhouetted against the moonlight. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat, unsure if I should approach or retreat. As the figure drew closer, I recognized her. It was Sarah, a fellow ranger who had been stationed in the park for almost as long as I had. She was known for her no-nonsense attitude and her uncanny ability to navigate the most treacherous trails. "Jake!" she called out, her voice edged with urgency. "What are you doing out here alone?" "I heard something on the radio," I stammered, the weight of my inexplicable mission pressing down on me. "It was—" "Stop right there," she interrupted, her eyes narrowing. "You need to listen to me. There's something happening in the eastern part of the park. People have gone missing, and there are rumors, strange things happening at night." I felt a chill run down my spine. "You've heard it too, then?" Sarah nodded, glancing around as if the trees themselves might be listening. "I thought it was just folklore, but after finding a few items near the trail, personal belongings, things that shouldn't be there, I realized it might be more than just stories. We need to stick together. I can't believe you came out here alone." Her concern struck a chord within me, intertwining with my growing sense of dread. "I'm not afraid of the stories," I said, trying to project confidence, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. "I just want to find out the truth." "Sometimes the truth is more dangerous than the stories," she replied, her gaze fixed on the darkened trees. "But if you're determined to go deeper, I'm with you. We need to figure out what's really happening before it's too late." As we pressed forward, the forest seemed to shift around us. The moonlight cast elongated shadows that danced with a life of their own. The air grew thick with a palpable tension, and I felt my sanity teetering on the brink. My childhood memories of my father's ghost stories bubbled to the surface, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was alive, that it was aware of our presence. "Jake," Sarah's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts. "Do you believe in spirits? In something beyond what we can see?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. I had always scoffed at such notions, but now doubt gnawed at me. "I don't know," I admitted finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "But if there's a chance that someone needs our help, we can't turn back." As we ventured deeper into the night, a rustling erupted from the underbrush, followed by an eerie silence. My heart raced as I turned to Sarah, our eyes locking in a moment of shared fear. Whatever was waiting for us in the dark had begun to make itself known, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap, one that blurred the line between reality and nightmare. Just then, a blood-curdling scream pierced the stillness, echoing through the trees. It was a sound that would haunt me forever, a reminder that the forest held secrets far more sinister than I could ever have imagined. The scream echoed through the trees, a sound that seemed to originate from the very depths of the forest. It clawed at my sanity, reverberating in my skull as I stood frozen in place. My mind raced, conjuring images of past encounters, lost hikers, tragic accidents. But this was different. This was primal, raw. It felt like a warning. "Jake, we need to move!" Sarah's voice jolted me back, breaking the spell of terror that had gripped me. She grabbed my arm, and we began to sprint toward the origin of the sound, though the instinct to flee screamed louder than reason. With each step, I felt the darkness closing in, as if the trees themselves were conspiring against us. The flashlight flickered, a momentary lapse that sent a jolt of panic through me. Just as I managed to stabilize the beam, I caught sight of a figure in the distance, hunched and dark against the moonlit backdrop. My heart raced as the figure turned, revealing a face I recognized all too well. "Sam?" I gasped, disbelief flooding through me. Sam had been my closest friend since childhood, a fellow lover of the wilderness. He had left the park years ago, disappearing from my life without explanation. I had often wondered what had happened to him, and now he stood before me, but he looked different, haunted, unkempt. "Jake!" he shouted, his voice strained, eyes wide with a mix of fear and desperation. "You shouldn't be here. You have to leave now." "What are you talking about?" I demanded, my confusion deepening. "What's going on?" Sarah stepped closer, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "Sam, we heard someone scream. Are you okay? What happened?" His gaze darted around us, as if he were scanning for invisible threats. "It's not safe. I came back to warn you, but it's worse than you think. The forest is—" He paused, swallowing hard, then continued, "It's alive. It doesn't want you here." My mind reeled, trying to make sense of his words. "What do you mean? Alive? Sam, you've been gone for years. You can't just throw around words like that." In that moment, the ground beneath my feet seemed to shift. Memories surged forward. The summer nights we spent camping in these very woods. The stories we told about the spirits that roamed the forest. I had dismissed them as childish fantasies, but now, standing here, I felt the weight of those tales, pressing down on me like a tangible force. "Jake, listen!" Sam's voice cut through the fog of my thoughts. "There are things in these woods, things that feed on fear, on loss. They've taken people before. I thought I could escape, but they found me. They'll find you too if you don't leave." I could feel the panic rising within me, threatening to choke me. "Why didn't you tell me this before? Why did you disappear?" His eyes flickered with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Regret? Guilt? I didn't want to believe it myself, but I'm drawn back here. I thought I could help, but I was wrong. I should have stayed away. Sarah stepped back, her expression shifting from concern to something darker. "You knew all along, didn't you?" I turned to her, confused by the sudden edge in her voice. "What are you talking about?" "Sam's not the only one with secrets," she said, her gaze locking on Sam with an intensity that made my stomach churn. "There's a reason people go missing, and it's not just the forest. It's the people in it." Before I could process her words, a low growl resonated from the depths of the trees, vibrating through the ground and shattering the fragile sense of security we had. My heart raced as I turned back to Sam, but he was already gone, swallowed by the shadows. "Where did he go?" I yelled, but Sarah's expression had shifted, her demeanor now cold and calculating. "I think it's time we found out what's really hidden in this forest," she said, her voice steady. But there was an undercurrent of something else, something I didn't understand. The air thickened with tension as I realized that the mystery was far more complex than I could have imagined. As the growl intensified, I knew we were no longer just searching for answers. We were part of a game, and the stakes were higher than I had ever anticipated. The growl reverberated through the trees, deep and guttural, sending chills down my spine. I turned to Sarah, her face illuminated by the dim beam of my flashlight, and in that moment, her expression morphed from cold determination to something almost feral. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" I swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling like a stone in my stomach. "What do you mean people go missing because of the people in it?" She took a step closer, her eyes glinting in the pale light. "You think Sam just disappeared? He was part of something bigger than the forest itself." "What are you saying?" I felt the ground tremble beneath me, as if the very earth was responding to the tension in the air. "What are you involved in?" With a sudden movement, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small, ornate dagger, its blade shimmering ominously. "You need to understand, Jake, this forest has power. It's a conduit for something ancient, and those who know how to tap into it can control it." I stumbled back, shock coursing through me. "You're not serious. You're playing with forces you don't understand." Panic clawed at my throat. I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that the girl I had trusted was entwined in something so dark. The growl grew louder, echoing off the trees as if it were responding to her words. I could feel the forest watching us, the shadows shifting just beyond the reach of my flashlight. "We need to go," I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. But Sarah's eyes were fixed on the darkness, her expression a mask of determination. "No, Jake, we can't leave. Not now. We have to confront it." Before I could protest, she turned to face the shadows, the dagger raised high. "I'm not afraid. I need to finish what I started." "Finish what?" I asked, my heart pounding as I glanced back toward where Sam had vanished. "What did you start?" She didn't answer. Instead, she called out into the darkness. "I know what you are. I'm here to take back what you've taken." Her voice rang with a conviction I didn't understand, and the growl transformed into a low, mocking laughter that seemed to seep from the very trees themselves. In that moment, I felt the ground shift again, this time more violently. The branches creaked ominously overhead as if the forest were awakening. "Sarah, stop!" I yelled, rushing toward her, but it was too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, twisted, and full of malice. It loomed over us, eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The air crackled with energy, and I realized I was standing at the precipice of something monumental, a choice that would determine our fate. I had to decide: confront the darkness with Sarah, now a stranger to me, or run, abandoning everything I once held dear, including my own sense of self. The moment stretched, the weight of the decision pressing down on me like the thick fog enveloping the trees. "Jake!" Sarah's voice pierced through the chaos, her eyes pleading. "Choose now." In that instant I understood. The forest was not the only thing alive. So too were the choices we made, and we were entwined in a fate far more complex than we had ever imagined. The air crackled with tension as Sarah stood resolute, dagger raised, her silhouette stark against the encroaching darkness. I felt the primal instinct to flee surge within me, but I couldn't abandon her, not now. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and stepped forward, joining her as the towering figure loomed ever closer. "Jake!" Sarah shouted, her voice fierce. "We can't let it win!" The creature's twisted form writhed, shadows coiling around it like serpents. "You think you can reclaim what was lost?" it hissed, a voice that sent tremors through my bones. "You are merely a whisper in the dark." I gripped Sarah's arm, my heart racing. "We need to work together. We can't let it divide us." I could feel the weight of our shared past, the friendships that had bonded us, now teetering on the brink of destruction. With a fierce nod, Sarah and I stood side by side. "Together," she said, her voice steady. The dagger glinted in her hand, a beacon against the encroaching shadows. She plunged it into the earth, chanting words that felt ancient, resonating with power I couldn't comprehend. The ground shook violently, and the creature shrieked, a sound that pierced the night. I felt a surge of energy ripple through me, a connection to the forest that I had never known. But it was fleeting, a flicker of understanding before the darkness closed in again. As the creature writhed, the shadows began to peel away, revealing glimpses of the lost. People swallowed by the forest, faces twisted in eternal despair. I realized then that the forest had claimed them, feeding off their fear, their anguish. "We have to break its—" "Hold!" I screamed, adrenaline surging through me. But in that moment, the creature lunged, its claws swiping toward us. I pushed Sarah aside, the pain radiating through my side as its claws grazed me. I staggered back, feeling the warm blood trickle down my shirt. "Jake!" Sarah cried, but I felt a rush of resolve surge through me. "Finish it!" I shouted, urging her on. With a fierce cry, she drove the dagger deeper into the earth, chanting louder. The shadows screamed in rage, and suddenly the forest erupted in brilliant light. I felt the darkness retreat, howling as it was pulled back into the depths of the trees, leaving behind an eerie silence. But it was not without a cost. As the last remnants of the creature faded, I fell to my knees, breathless and bleeding. Sarah rushed to me, her hands trembling as she pressed down on my wound. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, though I could see the fear in her eyes. "Sam!" I gasped, realizing the cost of our victory. We had saved ourselves, but what? Of our friend? My heart raced with the weight of our actions. The forest was quiet now, but I knew its secrets were far from over. As Sarah bandaged my side, I noticed something shimmering at the base of the tree where the dagger had struck. A small, ornate key glinted in the fading light. "What is that?" I asked, pointing weakly. "I don't know," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I think it's a clue. Maybe there's more to this forest than we thought." I nodded, my resolve hardening. We had survived, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would linger. The mystery of Sam's disappearance hung over us, like a dark cloud, and the key hinted at deeper secrets yet to be uncovered. As we stumbled away from the clearing, I caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows, a figure watching us from the trees. My heart raced anew. This was not over. The forest was still alive, and its mysteries were far from resolved. "Let's go home," I said, glancing back at the darkened woods. But I knew deep down that the forest would call to us again, and when it did, we would have to be ready. The air crackled, but now it was the silence that filled the void, heavy and suffocating. As I leaned against the ancient tree, the remnants of our battle faded into the shadows, leaving only the echo of Sarah's chants. The key shimmered at my feet, a silent promise of more to come, yet the unease gnawed at me. What if it comes? "Back," I whispered, my voice barely a murmur. The weight of the darkness still lingered, threatening to pull us back into its depths. Sarah turned her gaze toward the woods, her brow furrowed in thought. "We need to find out what this key unlocks," she said, but her voice trembled. I nodded, but doubt crept into my mind. The forest had shown us its teeth, and now I wondered if we were merely pawns in a game far beyond our understanding. "Jake," she said suddenly, her eyes wide with fear, "what if there are more creatures, more like it?" "Then we'll be ready," I replied, though my heart sank. We had survived, but at what cost? The faces of the lost haunted me, and the thought of leaving Sam behind was a weight I couldn't bear. As I turned to leave the clearing, a chilling breeze swept through the trees, carrying with it a whisper, a promise that this was not the end. I felt the key vibrate, pulsing with untold power, and fear gripped my heart anew. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, and in the periphery I sensed movement, a figure watching us from the thicket. My pulse quickened. "Sarah, we're not alone." Before I could react, the darkness surged forward, enveloping us once more, and just like that, the forest reawoke, its mysteries far from resolved. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. Why do we often venture into the wild, seeking solace and clarity, only to stumble into darkness? That question lingered in my mind like smoke from a campfire long extinguished as I stood before the remnants of an abandoned campsite in Yellowstone National Park. The scattered belongings, soggy tents, a half-burned log, and a cooler left ajar spoke of sudden departure, but it was the jagged rock face before me that sent a chill down my spine. There, in blood-red paint, the words "No Escape" screamed a warning that echoed through the trees, piercing the serene facade of the park I had known all my life. For years, the trails of Yellowstone had offered me refuge from the chaos of the world. The towering pines and the whisper of the wind had been my companions, filling the silence with their ancient stories. I was Carter, a park ranger whose life revolved around the rhythms of nature. My days were spent ensuring the safety of visitors, guiding them through the breathtaking vistas of Mammoth Hot Springs and the vibrant colors of Grand Prismatic Spring. Each footprint in the dirt was a reminder of my purpose, a purpose that now felt tenuous in the face of the evidence suggesting something far more sinister at play. Just last month, I had brushed aside rumors of missing hikers and strange occurrences. Along the trails, isolated incidents, I thought. But as I traced my fingers over the ominous message on the rock, I realized those whispers had morphed into something I could no longer ignore. What had once been mere gossip had now become a thread connecting this tranquil escape to a tapestry of global violence and horror. The walls of my sanctuary were closing in, and I felt the weight of the world pressing down on me. My instincts kicked in, and I began to piece together the fragments of a puzzle that stretched far beyond the park's borders. I'd heard the name whispered in hushed tones at ranger meetings: the architect, a predator known for his meticulous methods and chilling efficiency. His reputation loomed large, a specter that tainted the very air I breathed. As I dug deeper, I uncovered a trail of bodies that led back to this very park, each victim another reminder that the wilderness I loved could also be a hunting ground for those who thrived on chaos. The isolation of Yellowstone, once a comfort, now felt like a trap. Each new clue I stumbled upon, unusual tracks in the mud, eerie messages left at crime scenes, pulled me deeper into a web spun with danger. I could almost hear the forest whispering warnings, the rustling leaves urging me to turn back. Yet I was drawn forward, compelled by a sense of duty to protect the innocent and to unravel the mystery that threatened my home. As I grappled with the enormity of my task, memories from my past crept in, uninvited yet familiar. I had once lost someone dear to me in circumstances I could not control, a haunting reminder that the world often plays by its own cruel rules. Now I stood on the precipice of another tragedy, facing an enemy who thrived on fear and manipulation. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As twilight descended upon the park, the shadows of the trees grew long and twisted, wrapping around me like a cloak of unease. The air turned colder, and the once comforting sounds of the forest morphed into an unsettling silence, as if the wilderness itself was holding its breath. I was alone in this vast expanse, but the weight of my solitude was suddenly pierced by the crunch of footsteps behind me. I turned, heart racing, to find Lily, a fellow ranger and my closest confidant, emerging from the underbrush. Her bright eyes were clouded with concern, and her usually vibrant spirit seemed dimmed. "Carter," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what's going on? I heard about the campsite. Is it true?" I nodded. The memory of the blood-red warning still burned into my mind. "It's worse than we thought, Lily. There's something sinister at play here. I can feel it." She stepped closer, her brow furrowed with worry. "I've been hearing things too. Rumors about people disappearing, sightings of strange figures on the trails. You're not safe here. We need to warn the others." I shook my head, a wave of frustration washing over me. "No, we need to find out what's happening. We can't let fear dictate our actions. If we retreat now, we'll be trapped in our own terror." Lily's gaze hardened, but I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. "You can't face this alone, Carter. Whatever's happening is bigger than us. Let me help. We can work together." The tension between us hung like a taut string, a delicate balance of trust and anxiety. I could feel the pull of my past, the weight of loss that threatened to swallow me whole if I let it. "I appreciate your concern, but I can't lose anyone else," I confessed, my voice cracking. "Not again." Her expression softened, and I saw the glimmer of understanding there. "You're not alone. You have me, and I won't let you go down this path by yourself. We'll find answers together." As the last light of day faded, I felt a rush of determination. I couldn't let fear control me. I had to face whatever darkness lay ahead. "Okay," I said, steeling myself, "let's uncover the truth." Our investigation began with the remnants of the campsite. We meticulously searched for anything that could lead us to answers. Discarded items, traces of struggle, anything that might hint at the fate of those who had vanished. Just as we were about to give in to despair, I spotted something unusual beneath the ash of the campfire, a small metallic object glinting in the dying light. I knelt down, brushing away the soot to reveal a pendant intricately designed with symbols I couldn't decipher. "What do you think this means?" I asked, holding it up for Lily to examine. Her eyes widened as she took it from me. "I've seen this before," she said slowly. "In the park archives. It belongs to a group that was reported missing last year. They were last seen near the cliffs." Panic surged within me. "The cliffs? That's where we need to go next." But just as we gathered ourselves to leave, a rustle in the trees caught our attention. We turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows. He was tall, with a worn ranger's hat pulled low over his face and a tense posture that radiated suspicion. "Who are you?" he demanded, stepping forward. "What are you doing here?" I recognized him instantly. It was Hank, a veteran ranger, known for his brusque demeanor and reluctance to engage with the newer staff. But there was something different about him tonight, something guarded, as if he carried the weight of secrets. We're investigating the campsite, I replied, trying to gauge his intent. We think it's connected to the disappearances. Hank's eyes narrowed, and I felt the air grow thick with tension. You two need to turn back. This isn't a game. There are things out there you don't understand. The warning sent a chill down my spine, and I exchanged a worried glance with Lily. What do you know? I pressed, the urgency rising in my voice. More than I can tell you, he said cryptically, his gaze flickering toward the forest. But trust me, you don't want to find out. As he turned to leave, I felt a surge of frustration. Wait, you can't just walk away. We need your help. Hank paused, his back to us. Sometimes the truth is better left buried, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, before he disappeared into the shadows. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, igniting a fire of determination within me. I was no longer just a guardian of the park. I was now a seeker of truths, and the darkness that lurked within the wild would no longer be allowed to thrive unchecked. With Lily by my side, I set my sights on the cliffs, knowing that each step forward would unravel. A greater mystery, a greater danger. The night was just beginning, and I could feel the hunt had only just begun. As we made our way toward the cliffs, the weight of Hank's warning gnawed at my mind. What does he mean, better left buried? I muttered, frustration bubbling up inside me. The shadows of the trees creaked like old bones, and every rustle of leaves seemed to echo my unease. Do you think he knows something we don't? Lily asked, her voice trembling slightly. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the darkness, but I could see the fear lurking beneath her bravado. I don't know, I admitted, my heart pounding against my ribcage. But whatever it is, I'm not turning back now, not after what we've uncovered. The path to the cliffs was winding and treacherous. Each step felt like a descent into an abyss, and the night air thickened with an oppressive silence. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that eyes were tracking our every move. I glanced over at Lily, whose expression mirrored my own turmoil. Carter, she said suddenly, stopping in her tracks. Do you remember that summer we spent at the lake? You told me about your brother, how he disappeared during a camping trip? What if this is somehow connected? Her words struck a nerve, and I felt a rush of memories flood back. My brother's laughter, the way he'd always challenge me to climb higher or run faster. Then came the emptiness when he vanished, the grief that settled over my family like a shroud. I had buried that pain deep, convinced I could outrun it. Lily, I don't want to think about that right now, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. But what if this is happening again? What if it's not just about the park, she pressed, her voice a mix of urgency and fear. I clenched my fists, feeling the shadows close in around me. I can't lose anyone else, I barely whispered, the weight of my past crashing down like a tidal wave. The truth was, I had always believed my brother's disappearance was my fault. I was supposed to watch him, to protect him. The guilt had etched itself into my soul, and now, standing on the precipice of another mystery, I feared it would consume me again. Just as I was about to voice my fears, a distant scream shattered the night. It echoed off the cliffs, raw and desperate, sending a jolt of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I exchanged a terrified glance with Lily. Did you hear that? Yes, she breathed, her face paling. What was that? Before I could respond, the ground beneath us trembled slightly, and a low rumble filled the air. My heart raced as I realized the cliffs weren't just a destination. They were a living entity, shifting and alive with secrets of their own. Then, from the shadows of the trees, figures emerged, dark, silent specters that seemed to glide rather than walk. My mind reeled. Had we stumbled into something more than just a search for answers? Were these the lost souls of the park? Or something far worse? Carter, we need to go, Lily urged, her voice trembling with fear, but I stood frozen, my mind racing. The specters were eerily familiar, and the symbols on the pendant glinted in the moonlight, revealing a connection I hadn't seen before. Suddenly, a wave of recognition washed over me. The figures bore an uncanny resemblance to the missing campers. from last year, the very group Hank had warned us about. My breath caught in my throat. No, it can't be, I whispered, my mind spiraling into chaos, questioning my own sanity as the past collided with the present. Lily grabbed my arm, pulling me back to reality. We can't stay here. We have to warn the others. But as we turned to flee, the ground shook again, and the shadows began to close in. Whatever darkness lurked in the park had awakened, and now it was hungry. The shadows converged around us, their forms shifting and twisting like smoke. I could feel Lily's grip tightening on my arm, her pulse racing as fear coursed through her. In that moment, everything I had buried began to claw its way to the surface. The guilt over my brother, the weight of Hank's warning, and the undeniable dread of what we were about to face. Carter. Lily's voice broke through my thoughts, and I turned to see her eyes wide with terror. We can't let them catch us. I nodded, but my instincts were in conflict. Part of me wanted to run, to escape this nightmare, but another part, an irrational, stubborn part, needed to confront whatever was happening here. No, wait, I said, pulling her back as the figures approached. What if we can communicate with them? What if they're trying to tell us something? Lily shook her head vehemently. You think they're trying to help us? Look at them. She pointed, her voice rising in panic. They're not just lost, they're angry. As the specters drew closer, I could make out their features, hollow eyes and mouths that twisted in silent screams. Each face was a reminder of the campers who had vanished, and my heart sank deeper. What do you want from us? I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of my fear. The nearest specter paused, its ethereal form flickering like a flame. I felt a surge of energy, a connection, as if it recognized my torment. You're not supposed to be here, it seemed to whisper, though no sound came. The air crackled with tension, and I could feel the weight of its intent pressing down. On me, Carter, this is insane. We have to go. Lily pulled at my arm again, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. They're trying to tell us something. Maybe they're trapped, just like my brother was. Suddenly, from the back of the spectral group, a new figure emerged. A man, tall and imposing, with a familiar face. Hank. You shouldn't have come here, he said, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the air. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Panic surged within me as I grappled with the implications. Was he part of this? Had he known all along? You're one of them, I stammered, my heart racing as I took a step back. You're one of the missing. Not by choice, he snapped, a desperation in his eyes. You need to leave. I tried to warn you. They feed on your fear, your guilt. It's what keeps them tethered to this place. The ground quaked again, and I felt the shadows reach out toward me, tendrils of darkness wrapping around my ankles. Lily, run! I shouted, but I was rooted in place, my heart pounding in my ears. As the figures surged forward, I faced Hank, desperately searching for a glimmer of hope. How do we stop this? I yelled over the chaos. Tell me! Stepped closer, his expression softening just a fraction. You have to confront your past. You can't let it control you. Only then can you break the cycle. I inhaled sharply, the weight of his words crashing over me. Memories of my brother flooded my mind, the overwhelming guilt that had haunted me for years. I had to face it, to forgive myself, to let go. But could I do it in time? As the specters closed in, I stood at the precipice of a choice. Would I give in to fear, or would I confront the darkness within me? The answer lay in the heart of the storm, and I knew I had to embrace it before it consumed us all. The shadows lunged, their whispers growing louder, a cacophony of tormented voices that clawed at my mind. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to remember my brother's laughter, the way his eyes sparkled with mischief the day I let him down. I felt the tendrils of darkness tightening around me, but I pushed through, summoning every ounce of courage I had left. I'm sorry, I shouted, the words tearing from my throat with all the pent-up grief and guilt. I never meant to abandon you. The shadows paused, their movements stuttering as if my confession had struck a chord. Suddenly, the air shifted. A blinding light erupted from within me, illuminating the swirling mass of darkness. I felt a surge of warmth, a cleansing fire that pushed against the shadows. The specters hissed, recoiling from the light, their forms flickering like dying flames. "Carter!" Lily's voice cut through the chaos, her face lit with hope, but laced with fear. "Keep going, you can do this." With each word I spoke, each memory I faced, the light grew stronger. "I forgive myself," I cried, my voice ringing out with newfound conviction. "I choose to let go." As if responding to my declaration, the shadows began to dissolve, dissipating into wisps of smoke that faded into the night. Hank stepped back, watching with a mix of awe and sorrow. "You've done it," he murmured, his form shimmering as the darkness relinquished its grip. But just as I thought victory was within reach, a low rumble echoed from the forest, and a dark portal opened behind Hank. The ground trembled, and I could feel the pull of something vast and ancient, waiting to be unleashed. "This isn't over," Hank warned, desperation creeping into his voice. "They will come for you again, you've only pushed them back." Lily grabbed my arm, pulling me away as the portal began to swallow Hank. "We have to go now," she urged, tears brimming in her eyes. I turned to Hank, a part of me desperately wanting to save him, but the shadows were already clawing at his feet. "I'm sorry," I shouted, feeling the weight of his sacrifice crashing over me. "I will find a way to help you." As we sprinted away, the forest erupted with a cacophony of screams and whispers. The shadows may have been banished for now, but their echoes lingered in my mind, a reminder of the darkness that still thrived in the corners of the world. We stumbled into the clearing, breathless and shaken, but alive. Yet, as the dawn's light broke through the trees, I felt the heaviness in my chest. I had confronted my past, but at what cost? The scars remained, both physical and emotional. I could still feel the icy grip of the shadows, and I knew they would haunt me. Lily glanced at me, her expression a mixture of relief and dread. "What do we do now?" I looked back toward the forest, the place of nightmares and lost souls. "We prepare," I said, a steely resolve hardening in my voice. "This isn't the end. There are still unanswered questions, and I can't walk away knowing there are others like Hank out there." As we made our way back to the campsite, I noticed a faint shimmer of darkness lingering in the tree line, a flicker of something that didn't quite belong. A warning, perhaps, or a promise of more to come. The shadows may have retreated, but I felt a new mystery brewing within me, a sense that my journey was just beginning, and I would stop at nothing to uncover the truth. As we made our way back to the campsite, the forest behind us felt alive, pulsing with a malevolence that I could almost taste. Each step was heavy, laden with the weight of the shadows that had clawed at my soul. I could still hear their whispers, their promises of vengeance and despair echoing in my mind. "Carter, are you okay?" Lily's voice brought me back to the present, but the uncertainty lingered like a fog that refused to lift. I nodded, though doubt gnawed at my insides. The light I had summoned felt like a fragile flame flickering against the encroaching darkness. As we reached the clearing, I cast one last glance toward the forest, half expecting the shadows to surge back, hungry for revenge. Instead, the trees stood silent, and I felt a chill creep over me. Had I truly banished them, or were they simply waiting for the right moment to strike? Suddenly, a chilling gust of wind swept through the clearing, and I froze. A figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the trees. It was Hank, his expression a mix of anguish and resolve. "You cannot escape your fate, Carter," he called, his voice resonating with a haunting echo. "They will find you, and next time, they won't let you go." My heart raced as I turned to Lily, but she was already stepping back, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave now." But before we could move, the ground trembled again, and the dark portal reappeared, pulsing with a sinister energy. The air crackled, and I felt the shadows reaching out, clawing at my resolve. "Carter!" Lily shouted, grabbing my hand. "We can't stay here." As I stood torn between the portal's pull and the darkness closing in, I realized I was at a crossroads. The shadows were not just a threat, they were a part of me now, woven into my very being. With a final glance toward Hank, who stood trapped between two worlds, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my choice settle over me. I would face the darkness again. I would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The forest erupted in a chorus of screams, the shadows swirling around me, and I stepped forward, ready to embrace whatever fate awaited. And in that moment, I knew the shadows were only the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. What if the forest held secrets that whispered only to those brave enough to listen? As I stepped deeper into the shadows of Acadia National Park, I felt the weight of its ancient trees bearing down on me, their gnarled branches like fingers stretching into the twilight sky. I had come here to escape the noise of city life, the chaos of human existence. But sometimes the woods speak too loudly. I'm Bram, a park ranger by trade, a sentinel of these storied lands. For years I've patrolled the rugged trails of Mount Desert Island, my heart entwined with the rhythms of nature. Each rustle of the leaves, each call of a distant bird felt like a conversation with the spirits that linger here. But on that fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a different kind of presence called to me, a flickering light slicing through the underbrush, pulling me closer, deeper into the woods. As I approached, the air thickened with an unnameable tension. That's when I saw him, a hooded figure standing at the edge of the trail, framed by the encroaching darkness. He raised his hand, and in a gesture that felt both ceremonial and chilling, he dropped a small, intricately carved axe onto a weathered log before vanishing into the shadows. My heart raced, a primal instinct igniting within me. Was this a figment of my imagination, or had I stumbled upon something truly otherworldly? For years I had heard the stories, tales of spectral lumberjacks who roamed these woods, tied to the land by some ancient pact. The locals whispered about missing hikers and strange symbols carved into trees, remnants of rituals that blurred the line between the living and the dead. I always dismissed them as folklore, a way to explain the inexplicable. But now, standing alone in the fading light, I couldn't shake the feeling that the past was reaching out to me, begging to be uncovered. As I delved deeper into this sudden mystery, strange signs began to emerge. Freshly turned earth, peculiar scratch marks on trees, and the unmistakable imprint of a boot. Each clue seemed deliberately placed, leading me further into an enigma I could not ignore. I was no longer just a park ranger, I had become a detective, in a world where shadows danced and secrets thrived. But why? What drove this hooded figure to leave such traces behind? The thought of rituals and ancient traditions sent shivers down my spine. Was I trespassing on sacred ground? The very uncertainty of it all gnawed at my mind. Perhaps it was my own past, distant family tales of loss and redemption that urged me to seek answers. I had lost a brother years ago, a tragedy that shadowed my heart and mind. Was this my chance to confront the fears that had haunted me? Or was I merely inviting further darkness into my life? The forest, which had once felt like a refuge, was transforming into a labyrinth of secrets. With each step I took, the weight of the trees pressed down on me, their ancient limbs sheltering both beauty and menace. I could feel the pulse of the earth beneath my feet, urging me to choose, to reveal the truth that lay buried within its depths, or to retreat, leaving the mysteries of the woods untouched. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As darkness enfolded the forest, I froze, the air suddenly electric with a tension I couldn't ignore. I glanced around, each creak of the underbrush echoing in my ears like a warning. The shadows twisted and turned, morphing into shapes that felt alive, watching me. I shook my head, trying to dispel the creeping dread that threatened to overtake my senses. That's when I heard it, a low, haunting melody that drifted through the trees, beckoning me deeper into the night. It was then that I remembered the stories of the old woman, Agnes, who lived on the outskirts of the park. They said she could commune with the forest, that her wisdom was intertwined with the earth's secrets. I had always dismissed her as a quirky local, but now I felt an urge to find her, to seek her counsel. I turned back toward the trail, my heart pounding. As I made my way, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. The rustling leaves seemed to whisper my name, urging me to turn back. I pushed through the unease, the melody pulling me forward, until I emerged from the trees and found Agnes's small cabin, nestled in a clearing, bathed in moonlight. I knocked hesitantly, and the door creaked open, revealing the woman I had only known from afar. Her silver hair cascaded around her shoulders, and her eyes sparkled with an uncanny awareness, as if she had been expecting me. "Bram, come in," she said, her voice a soft lilt that danced with the wind. "The forest has been calling you." I stepped inside, the warmth of the fire contrasting sharply with the chill outside. I saw something in the woods, a figure, a light. "I think I'm in over my head." Agnes waved her hand dismissively. "You're not the first to be drawn by that light. Many have come before you, lured by the secrets of the forest, but few return unchanged." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "What do you mean?" "There are forces at play here, Bram. The spirits of the land are restless, and they seek something, someone. You may hold the key, but you must tread carefully." Her gaze bore into mine, and I could feel the weight of her words wrapping around me like a shroud. "Why me?" I asked, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I'm just a ranger. I don't have any special abilities." "Ah, but you do," she replied, her eyes gleaming with an intensity that made me shiver. "You carry the burden of loss, a wound that connects you to the past. The forest knows this and wishes to reveal its truths to you. It can heal, or it can harm." The gravity of her words settled over me, and I swallowed hard. I lost my brother years ago. I thought I had moved on, but maybe... I trailed off, overwhelmed by emotions that I had buried for too long. "Perhaps it is time to confront that pain," she said softly. "You need to understand the history of this place, the rituals that bind it. There are others who have felt the pull, others who have been drawn to the same secrets." "Others?" I asked, intrigued and wary. "Who?" She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There's a group that meets under the full moon, drawn by the same light you saw. They believe they can harness the power of the forest, but their intentions are not pure. You must be cautious, Bram. Not all who seek the truth seek it for the right reasons." My heart raced as I imagined this clandestine gathering, their motives shrouded in mystery. I realized then that I was not just a bystander in this unfolding drama. I was a player, thrust into a game that could uncover not only the forest's secrets, but my own as well. Agnes reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "You must act quickly. The next full moon is soon, and the balance of the forest is shifting. Trust your instincts, but remember, curiosity can lead to danger." With her words echoing in my mind, I made my decision. I would seek out this group, confront whatever darkness awaited me, and perhaps find the answers I so desperately needed. The shadows outside seemed to pulse with life, and I knew that the forest was waiting for me to take the next step into its depths. As I prepared to leave, a sense of determination washed over me. I was ready to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As I stepped out of Agnes's cabin, the cool night air washed over me, a stark reminder of the tension coiling within. The haunting melody still lingered, weaving through the trees, pulling me toward the unknown. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. My brother's face flashed in my mind, a fleeting image that fueled my determination. I had to know what truly happened to him. The moon hung heavy in the sky as I made my way back toward the trail. Shadows danced, but I pressed on, each step echoing with my heartbeat. Suddenly, an unfamiliar sound broke through the melody. "Ay-ahs, low, guttural growl that sent shivers racing down my spine. I stopped, straining to listen. The air felt thicker, charged, as though the forest itself held its breath. Then I saw it, a figure cloaked in darkness, emerging from the trees. My instinct screamed at me to run, but curiosity held me in place. The figure stepped into a patch of moonlight, revealing a familiar face that made my heart drop. It was Marcus, my brother's best friend, the last person I expected to see. "Here, Bram," he called, his voice trembling. "Is that you, Marcus?" I stepped closer, confusion swirling in my mind. "What are you doing here?" "I came to find you," he said, his eyes darting nervously. "I've been hearing things about the group, the rituals. I thought you might be in danger." "Danger? What do you know?" I pressed, the weight of his presence igniting old memories. I remembered the night of the accident, how Marcus had been with us. His face twisted with guilt, and I could see the shadows of that night lurking in his eyes. "I didn't want to believe it," he confessed, stepping closer. "But I've been having dreams. Dreams of the forest, of your brother. He's not gone, Bram. I think something happened to him that night, something we didn't understand." My heart raced, a mix of disbelief and hope surging through me. "What do you mean? You think he's still out there?" Marcus shook his head, the fear etched on his face. "I think he's trapped. The forest doesn't forget. It holds on to its secrets, and I believe it's holding on to him." Tension crackled between us as I recalled the stories Agnes had told me, the restless spirits seeking something. "But why would the forest choose me? Why now?" "Because you're connected," he said, urgency creeping into his voice. "You both felt it, your pain, your loss. It binds you to this place. The others, the group, they want to exploit that connection. They think they can control whatever is happening, but they don't understand the consequences." As the weight of his words settled over me, a sense of dread filled the air. The melody shifted, becoming more insistent, almost like a warning. I could feel the forest stirring as if it were aware of our conversation, listening, lurking. "I need to find them before they do something reckless," I said, my resolve hardening. "But if what you say is true, we can't do this alone." Marcus nodded, determination flickering in his eyes. "I'll help you. We'll find the truth together, but we have to be careful. If the forest has a grip on your brother, it won't want to let him go easily." Just as we turned to head deeper into the woods, the ground trembled beneath our feet. The shadows around us twisted into shapes, growing more defined, more threatening. The melody morphed into a cacophony of whispers, and I felt the air grow, thick with an unseen presence. "Bram, we need to move!" Marcus shouted, urgency lacing his voice. But I hesitated, the weight of my past crashing into me. Was I prepared to face the dark secrets of that night, to confront the truth that might shatter everything I thought I knew? The shadows loomed, and I could almost hear my brother's voice calling out from the depths of the forest, begging me to listen. "Let's go," I finally said, my pulse racing. I had to know what lay ahead, but as I stepped forward, uncertainty gnawed at my mind. What if the truth was more terrifying than the darkness itself? The forest awaited, and I knew I was about to uncover a mystery that would change everything. As we plunged deeper into the woods, the shadows seemed to breathe around us, expanding and contracting, like the forest itself was alive. The whispers intensified, merging into a haunting chorus that filled my ears, echoing memories of laughter and screams from that fateful night. I could feel the weight of the past pressing against my chest, suffocating the hope that had ignited within me. Moments before, "Bram, focus," Marcus urged, his voice snapping me back to the present. His eyes searched mine, filled with a mix of fear and determination. "We need to find the others. They could be anywhere." I nodded, but my heart was a wild drum, echoing the uncertainty. That danced in my mind. What if they had already done something? What if the forest had claimed them too? The thought sent a chill racing down my spine, but I pushed it aside. I couldn't think like that. I had to be brave, for Marcus, for my brother. As we moved forward, A sudden rustle from the underbrush drew our attention. We froze, every instinct screaming that we were no longer alone. Then, from the thicket, emerged a figure, one I recognized from the group. It was Lily, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Bram! Marcus," she gasped, stumbling toward us. "You have to get out of here. They're doing something terrible." "What do you mean?" I asked, urgency flooding my veins. "Where are the others?" "They're at the clearing," she said, glancing back as if afraid to say more. "They think they can control it, but they don't understand the darkness they're tampering with." Before I could respond, a low growl reverberated through the trees, louder and more menacing than before. The whispers escalated into frantic shouts, and I felt the ground shift beneath us again, as if the forest was alive, reacting to our presence. "What's happening?" Marcus shouted, grabbing my arm. "It's the forest," Lily cried out, her eyes darting around. "It's angry. You have to come with me before it's too late." Panic surged through me. The urgency in her voice suggested that whatever was happening in that clearing had escalated beyond our control. I could sense the forest closing in, an entity that didn't care for our intentions, only for its secrets. "No," I shouted, pulling away from Marcus and Lily. "We need to confront this. If there's a chance my brother is out there, we can't run. Bram, don't," Marcus pleaded, but I felt a surge of determination wash over me. The forest had taken too much already. I would not let fear dictate my actions any longer. I pushed forward, leading the way through the thicket, the air electric with tension. The growls grew louder, intermingling with the whispers, and I could feel the pulse of the forest beneath my feet. It was a living, breathing entity, demanding acknowledgement. As we burst into the clearing, the sight that met my eyes froze my heart. The others stood in a circle, chanting, their faces lit by the eerie glow of flickering candles. In the center, a shadowy figure writhed, caught between two worlds. I realized with a jolt, "My brother! Stop!" I screamed, my voice cutting through the chaos. The forest roared in response, and the ground trembled beneath us. But it was too late. The moment of reckoning had arrived, and I was about to confront the darkness that had haunted me for so long. As I stepped into the clearing, the chanting stopped abruptly, and all eyes turned toward me. My heart raced as I caught sight of my brother, his eyes wide with terror, trapped in the grip of something, ancient and dark. The shadowy figure writhed around him, tendrils of darkness twisting like smoke, hungry for the warmth of life. "Bram, no!" one of the others shouted, their voice a mixture of fear and regret. I recognized Sarah, her face pale and streaked with dirt. She had been the one to suggest we venture deeper into the woods to explore its secrets. Now she looked like a ghost, haunted by the consequences of her decisions. "Get away from him!" I yelled, charging into the circle. The air crackled with tension as the forest seemed to lean in, as if eager to witness the confrontation. I could feel the darkness trying to pull me in, wrapping itself around my mind, whispering promises of power and knowledge. But I wouldn't succumb. Not again. "Bram, you don't understand," Marcus shouted, stepping forward. But I ignored. Him. I had to save my brother. I reached out, grasping his hand, and in that moment, the forest erupted. A deafening roar filled the air, shaking the ground beneath us as the shadow surged, furious at being confronted. As I pulled my brother free, a blinding light burst forth from the figure, illuminating the clearing in a surreal glow. The force knocked me back, and I tumbled onto the ground, my body slamming against the earth. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I clenched my teeth, refusing to let go. My brother was free, but the consequences of our actions were far from over. The others stumbled back, some falling to their knees, overwhelmed by the light and the raw power of the forest. I looked around, panic rising in me. "What's happening?" I gasped, struggling to rise. The shadow recoiled, shrieking as the light enveloped it, twisting and contorting in a desperate attempt to escape. It faded, leaving behind echoes of the whispers that had haunted us. But as the darkness dissipated, I felt a shift in the air, a void where the shadow had been, as if something essential had been lost. "Is it over?" Lily whispered, her voice shaky, eyes wide with disbelief. I turned to see Marcus helping Sarah to her feet, his expression a mix of relief and confusion. "We did it," he said, but I could hear the fear lurking beneath his words. The forest was quiet now, but I could sense it still watching, still waiting. Yet even as I clutched my brother, relief washing over me, I felt an unsettling emptiness in my chest. The darkness may have been banished, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it had merely retreated, biding its time. The forest had secrets it still held close, mysteries that were far from resolved. As we stumbled back toward the path, my brother's grip on my arm tightened. "Bram, what if it comes back?" he asked, his voice trembling. I opened my mouth to reassure him, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I glanced back at the clearing, where shadows danced in the corners of my vision. "We'll figure it out," I said finally, though uncertainty gnawed at me. Even as we made our way back, I could still feel the weight of the forest, the remnants of its ancient power, lingering in the air. Behind me, I heard Sarah whispering to Marcus, her voice low, but the urgency was clear. "We need to find out what else is out there." And as we pushed through the trees, I couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lay in wait, hidden in the depths of the woods we barely understood. The forest had let us go this time, but I knew it wouldn't be long before it beckoned us back, and I was terrified of what we might find next. As we navigated through the trees, my mind raced, with questions I couldn't answer. The forest, once a backdrop for our childhood adventures, now loomed ominously around us, a sentient entity with secrets I could barely comprehend. I could feel its pulse, a rhythm of breath that echoed the beating of my heart, and I wondered if it would ever truly let us go. "Bram," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. "What if it isn't over? What if it's just waiting for us to return?" My brother's grip tightened, his fear palpable. "Then we'll be ready," he replied, but I could hear the tremor in his voice. The uncertainty of our decision hung heavily in the air. We had escaped this time, but at what cost? As we reached the edge of the woods, I paused, glancing back at the clearing. The blinding light had faded, but shadows lingered, curling around the trees like fingers reaching out for us. I felt a tug at my heart, an inexplicable pull that beckoned me deeper into the dark embrace of the forest. "Come on." Sarah's voice snapped me from my reverie, and we trudged onward. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed within me. A seed of darkness had been planted, and I feared it would bloom if I didn't confront it. As we stepped back into the world of light, the sun filtered through the branches, casting long shadows on the ground. I took a deep breath, but the air tasted different, tainted, as if the forest had left a mark on my soul. "Do you think it will follow us?" I asked, half joking. But the laughter that followed felt hollow. The truth was, I didn't know. I didn't know what lay ahead or what horrors the forest would conjure next. With every step away from the clearing, I felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. And as our laughter faded into uneasy silence, I realized that perhaps the real terror wasn't what lurked in the woods, but what we might carry within ourselves. A darkness that could awaken at any moment, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more tales filled with mystery and suspense. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this adventure, and leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.